Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Symphony. If this is your first time joining us, Symphony Entertainment, Gaming, and Arts is a gaming company that focuses on horror systems, indie games, organic content, and player agency to bring a symphonic approach to horror role-playing. I'm your host, Bucho, the production daddy, and this afternoon we're going to do a deep dive into some aspects of craft, namely that of writing. Whether it's creating a whole gaming system from scratch, writing a novel, or creating a scenario for a game that already exists, this stunning collection of creators will provide a little insight into their best practices, tips and tricks, as well as possibly highlight some of their favorite tools. One quick announcement, Symphony Entertainment has a Patreon, so if you like this content and would like us to create more, please back the Symphony on Patreon. You can check that out at patreon.com/Symphony Entertainment. So, without further ado, let's unveil the cast. Cast members, please introduce yourselves, tell us where people can find you, and some of the things that you do, starting with Evan.
Hi, I'm Evan Perlman. I write a lot of things for the Miskatonic Repository and other community content programs, including being involved in a number of group projects. You can find me on the Symphony Discord, on the Miskatonic University Podcast Discord. You can find me on Facebook, if you're still on there, or on Blue Sky at, I forget my Blue Sky handle, but just search. There's not that many of us there.
Fair enough. Graham?
Hi, everybody. My name is Graham Gentz. I use he and they pronouns. I am a facilitator, game designer, and occasionally a puppet. I love surrealism, turtles, and hip-hop. You can find me on most social medias at This May Be Graham. I'm also the playing culture lead at MythWorks, responsible for games like The Wild Sea and Slug Blaster Kickflip over a Quantum Centipede.
Awesome. Heinrich?
Greetings, Symphony. My name is Heinrich Moore, he, him. I am a community content creator, primarily on the Miskatonic Repository, and I'm probably best known for a couple of books, Heinrich's Call of Cthulhu Guide to Carcosa and Character Creation. If you have seen these, then you are probably familiar with my work.
All right. Jax?
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Bryk. I'm also known as Jax Romana on the internet. You can find me at most places on the internet as Rufflejax. That's RUFFLEJAX. I am on Blue Sky. I am on Instagram. You can also find my personal website at jacquelinebryk.design. I've worked with Onyx Path Publishing. I'm currently the English language editor for Cult Divinity Lost. I've worked with Ulysses Spele. I did work on a set for Magic the Gathering many moons ago. And I do all sorts of freelancing stuff. I am also a LARP designer and am hosting a small convention in November called Nauticon.
Fantastic. I know this is your first time with the Symphony, so welcome to your first stream with us. It is super exciting to have you here, both personally and professionally. Leslie.
Hello, I'm Leslie. Around the internet, you may see me as XPLovecat. I have two YouTube channels, one about tabletop role-playing games and one about fiction writing craft. And I am a developmental editor and book coach who helps both on the role-playing game side and on the novel writing side or short story writing side in horror, fantasy, and sci-fi. And I like to help people take their big, beautiful, messy work and make it something focused and pretty and nice and exciting.
Fantastic. So panel, we're going to talk some deep dive today about craft, which you all do various different things. Some of you, like Graham, you create games from scratch. Some of you create scenarios. So like Jax, Evan, Heinrich, and Leslie, you write books the same way that I do as well. So one of those things that I think about, even though the writing might be a little different in all of those mediums, the fundamental aspects of storytelling, I feel, are probably pretty true throughout all of those, no matter what. So talk to me about your writing philosophies. What makes a good story to you, whether it's one that you're writing or one that you're consuming? And then what do you try to, when you are creating your own stories, what are you trying to achieve typically? Anybody can start. Jax.
So something I find that is very different between writing interactive fiction, such as a TTRPG or a LARP, is you're setting up dominoes for other people to knock down. And I think a lot of people sort of come to this in a way where they will want to see a specific ending to their game, and I think that could be kind of a struggle shifting into that mode, because I know for me it's a huge struggle shifting from setting up dominoes to for other people to knock down into setting up dominoes for myself to knock down.
Sure.
And those are two, to me, very different kinds of crafts. I mean, but at the same time, sort of the heart is the same. You want to set up a conflict for people to work out. And when you're setting it up for other people to knock down, you want to give them the sparks of that conflict. Whereas when you're setting it up for yourself to knock down, you actually kind of want to like build and start the bonfire, if we can use that metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, I don't know, it's always very interesting watching people shift between the two. Because
Sure.
I think some people do it very well, and some people struggle with one or the other. I know I stopped trying to write any fiction longer than a short story because I get too stressed out about, am I making this too easy or too hard on the characters? So.
That's fair. I mean, that's interesting, because I have the opposite problem with like writing scenarios or game stuff. Fiction is very easy for me because it's just, I can just lock in and say what I want to say. But like, I don't think it's like relinquishing control to the players that I have a problem with. But it's I have a very converse reaction to that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think, Jux, you said it really well. Among the challenges of interactive fiction, the way you describe dominoes made me think of the way I think of it, which is writing TTRPGs is one of the few mediums where, as a storyteller, as a writer, you are trying to give the reader the tools for the destruction of your own work. This idea that, yes, you are providing a story, but most importantly, throughout that story, at the end of the day, the main characters, what the story is about, needs to be the players at the table. And so what I come back to in my writing very much is just asking myself over and over again, what are the interesting decisions that the players are getting to make at the table? And if the answer is there's only one, and that is to further the story that I have sort of in my head, then I know I need to ease up and provide some other interesting opportunities for the players to subvert the story, take control of it, change it, drive it, whatever. But they will need to be the ones to, as you put it, knock over those dominoes.
Yeah. And I think we get kind of caught up in giving our players a fun world to be in, which, to be fair, is a great thing to do. And we should, depending on your level of world building, you should be striving to do that. But also, one of the most common things I see is people like, oh, all this cool stuff happened 1,000 years ago in my world. And sort of not letting people play that out is one of the biggest mistakes I see people making when they're writing interactive fiction.
Yeah, I'd say that the complexity of your question, Booch, is the fact that we're talking about so many different kinds of writing.
Yeah.
In fiction, right, you largely have one author and one audience member. In something like a scenario, you're slowly falling down a hill. We're just going to have so many metaphors by the end of this stream, I think. And, some are system agnostic, but in many ways it's the most similar because you ostensibly have a story, although depending on the system, as well as the philosophy of the writer of the scenario, how flexible at these points, right? There's paragraphs that you're supposed to read out loud often, or ideas about details, physical details are there, and then usually kind of a vaguely apologetic footnote being like, or whatever you want, or I'm sorry for writing and being in a presence in your life at all.
Yeah.
And then outside of that is something very similar that's in like a game as well. A role-playing game is a cookbook. The game is the meal that you're making. And so the question is, what are you presenting? You're doing so many different things at once. Like Jack talked about, it's world building, but what is that world building? I also, if I'm always interested in somebody's homebrew campaign because it's real game design. I always say that. or their world or anything they want to do. But if they begin telling me about all the backstory, I'm immediately less interested because it's not doing the thing that is special about role playing, which is that the players are the one making, creating, interacting with that stuff. Like the backstory could be fine, but if it's a backstory, then I'll have a book and I'll be one audience and one author and I'll enjoy it that way. So what elements create a good story is really about what creates good fiction, what creates a readable or processable or explainable role-playing game, and then what is a scenario trying to do, and for the community, what are the community needs, and are those part of it? So many good scenarios that are written are by the community for the community. So it's absolutely people having conversation with each other, which is another important thing to remember. Which is
very cool conceptually. Like before I came into the gaming space, I did not realize that kind of creative level was happening for like Dungeons and Dragons and for Call of Cthulhu and for every other system. And so when I saw how deeply entrenched that idea was with the community, I was like, oh, that's dope. Like it fosters creativity, which is very cool. And that's one of the main draws that I had for the gaming world. So,
you had asked about philosophy and what makes a good story, and for me it's that it draws you in and makes you want to keep finding out what's happening. And so one of the reasons I got out of writing fiction is because, a lot of this stuff, like the dialogue and the inner emotional states, I'm just not interested in writing. Mm-hmm. So fortunately, when I get to scenarios, I don't have to do that because the players at the table will do that for me. Yeah. Right. I can set up the outline and say, here's literally the scenario. You fill it in with your own emotional life, your own interpretations. Graham, I'm really glad you mentioned the backstory, because when I'm editing someone's scenario, the first thing I do is cut out 6 paragraphs of backstory. And when we talk about wanting to draw you in, right, if you have that rich world building, let people discover it as consequences of what they're doing, whether it's archaeology or culture or things that they're running into, have it come out naturally because it makes you want to know, oh, that's cool. What's going on with this? What does this mean? Think about the Alien movie, like who is that gigantic dude in a chair? We didn't find out in the Alien movie, and that made it really cool. You don't have to expo dump 6,000 pages of history. If it's there, you can set up mysteries that are exciting to solve.
Yeah. So when I work with people who are writing novels in typically fantasy, I see it the worst, but in other genres as well, like because there's a lot of passion around world building, that they get bogged down and can sometimes have trouble like zooming out and seeing like, what is my story actually about? Because it's not about the world. The world is what propels the story to happen, but that's not what the story is actually about. And so I often tell people, all your world building is not going to end up on the page. Like you can have it for you, but it's not going to end up on the page. Some of it will.
So much of that is deeply like in your own mind, like that, like as long as you've got it, that's great. But it doesn't all belong on the page. Like there's no reason for a 2,000 page book of world building to exist. Doesn't need to happen. You can do a lot more of that.
Unless that's what you're writing. And you're
true. True.
Like if you're writing an atlas, like
sure.
The World of Ice and Fire was a really fun book. But that's because it was very specifically a history and atlas book for A Song of Ice and Fire. A Song of Ice and Fire does not open with its 500 pages of world building.
Because it's already been done at that point. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. But when I'm thinking about like what makes a good story across these different mediums, for me, it all comes back to character. So even in a role-playing game, you write characters, NPCs, and these characters need to have motivations. And motivations that are interesting as well. So even if you're thinking about, okay, how does that show up at the table? How does the GM, do they have enough information to properly display this at the table so that other players can play off of that and understand really what's going on with the story? And then same thing with short stories, novels. What makes your character interesting enough that we actually want to devote our time to sit down and read the book? So yeah, what is propelling your character to do the things that they're doing? And that is really the heart of a lot of good stories for me is I like the characters.
Me too.
That speaks to my entire thesis of like the human mind and narrative. Like, why are we narrative creating machines, and why do we get so emotionally attached to a TV show, a book series that's 2 or 3 novels or 10 seasons removed of being awful, but we can't look away, or why we're invested, or why do cultural events happen where all of a sudden everybody is so connected to a particular kind of fiction. For me, it begins and ends with character. Like, these are real relationships in our heads. They are the same as the people we know, because for some reason that is the way that we are socially inclined to react. And so all of it comes because of character, and I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And in the TTRPG space specifically, I think one of the things that authors sometimes neglect, especially when they're starting out, is this idea of giving the non-player characters strong motivations, not just for creating a compelling story, although that's going to be the ultimate outcome, but because of the interactive nature of it. If you have strong motivations, you as the game master are going to be able to predict what the non-player characters are going to do in response to what the players are going to do, or indeed what they're going to do if the player characters are not taking certain actions, right? And that is going to help drive the story forward in a way that can get lost if you don't have that in mind. I think one of the interesting overlaps between fiction and interactive fiction like TTRPGs is when you provide players pre-generated investigators or heroes or characters, and the decision making of how much backstory do you give those characters to equip them to face a scenario, or how little do you do? And I think depending on, I don't think there's a right answer there, but it can help you either drive the plot or help players discover some creativity, or help players have maybe an experience that they weren't expecting to have, like actually inhabiting this character and really trying to act based on their motivations. That is a fun all of its own.
Yeah. Let's talk a little about some of your processes and your habits. I know I am very idiosyncratic about the way that I approach my projects. Like, how do you guys, when you come to a new project, is there a process you've got? Do you make playlists? Do you have a particular place in your house where you write? Do you like to go somewhere else outside of your house to write? Like, what's that process look like for you guys?
Well, go ahead, Jax.
No, you start.
I guess I'll start by observing that it depends at which stage of a project I am. The routine I have at the beginning of a project, where I am spending a lot of time going on long, lonely walks and just doing a lot of thinking and scrawling in notebooks, is very different from the middle of a project, where I am looking to create a routine for myself, whether that is, go in the morning 2 hours to a coffee shop or whatever, to put myself in an environment where biologically my body is sort of primed for, like, okay, this is now what we are doing. Because I know, like, writing is interesting, it's fun, but there is also a lot of work that has to be done. And so I need to have different routines for the kinds of creativity that I need to bring to a project.
Jax?
Yeah, my answer is actually very similar. Some projects I'm just going to do in sprints, where I sit down and I throw on a playlist and I'm banging out like 2,000 words in an hour and a half. And some projects I have to just crawl through. Like, and sometimes they're the same project, right? Like, sometimes you'll get really stuck on part of a project and you have to just, okay, I'm going to do 200 words today. That's it. I just need to do 200 words. And sometimes it's like, oh, wow, I've gone into a flow state and now the project is finished. I'm not very good at having routines for writing, which is very funny given my OCD. You'd think that would be good for creating routines for writing. It's not. But I find following sort of the vibe of how my brain is interacting with the project
Yeah.
has been very helpful for me. And also something that I got from working with Onyx Path, especially with Monica Specca and Danielle Lausen, is the phrase "done is beautiful," because it's so hard to not get over our own perfectionism and, oh, this didn't look like how I thought it was going to look. And just getting it on the page, to me, is more important
Yeah.
than someone else can tweak it. That's what editors are for, and that's what I do for Cult Divinity Lost. Is I love my cultists, I do, but their whole philosophy is overwrite everything, and then Jax will just cut it into pieces. It'll be fine.
That's super efficient. Yeah.
It is, and I love looking at weird turns of phrase that they've put in there. But yeah, just being able to know that, hey, you are not the only one involved in your process. You can involve anyone else you want to. That was such a hurdle for me.
Really?
Is realizing that, no, authors don't do things by themselves. They have beta readers, they have editors, they have people that look over stuff. Because, again, with my OCD, I'm like, well, everybody else is doing it by themselves. Why can't I? So being able to involve other people in my process and sort of less white knuckling it, is, I guess, the closest. Writing 200 words a day and not white knuckling it is, I guess, the closest thing I have to a writing process or habit.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned about being in the right headspace for that specific project. And I find that for me personally, every new book that I write, there is a different, I tend to change up my routine in different ways because each book is different. So I want the experience to be different writing it too. And I feel like that puts me in a much better headspace. My basement is it's all blue lighting now. And so I'll go down there and turn on some really dark ambient and just write until, my dark fairy tale book. And that's the right vibe for what I'm doing. So, that's exactly how it works for me. So
on a more granular level of trying to find your vibe, something to pay attention to is your energy levels throughout the day and when your brain is best primed for creative work.
Yeah.
So golden hour for me is 10 a.m. to noon. If I can work then, beautiful. Of course, it doesn't always happen that way, but just being aware of okay, I normally would like to be working at 10 a.m., but today I'm working at 8 p.m. Maybe I'm not going to get as many words done as I would have liked or my expectations. So also having reasonable expectations for yourself, which is something that's very difficult, I think, for a lot of people. But being able to adjust those expectations based on your daily energy levels and flow and whatever other life things are going on, I think is really important.
Yeah.
Just to share a couple of tools. One is I use a lot of outlining. My first and second passes at a project are always outlined because I tend to have great ideas, or I'll have a climactic scene I know I want to see. But to me, it takes a lot less energy to outline than to try to write prose. And so I will do, very high level outline, and then I'll dive in and build it out more until it's the middle state is half prose, half bulleted lists. And then I'll do a final pass where I'm okay, which of these can stay bulleted lists, which is something you can and should do in scenarios. It's very readable. And which of this can be expanded out into prose. Another thing I do, and this is really good for those of us with short energy reserves, is and little amount of time, is I'll use what they call the tomato timer, the Pomodoro method, or we call it a writing sprint in the Symphony community. But you just put on a timer for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 at the max probably, and you do nothing but working on your project for that period of time. It doesn't, some people will write, stream of consciousness. Some people use that time for editing, whatever you want to do, but you're not allowed to flip to other tabs or do anything else. And then the hard part is when you get to the end of that time, you have to stop. And which sucks because you started to get into a flow state half the time. You're no, I want to keep going, but that's good. You want to keep going. You give yourself a 5 or 10 minute break, and then you're allowed to come back.
So Evan, like, I know for me personally, that particular method just does not fly whatsoever. Like, what is the benefit that you are getting out of that you've been using it so often?
When I say to myself, I have a 2-hour block of time, I'm going to sit down and write for 2 hours, I do not start. I am overwhelmed at the requirements for the energy and the thought needed for that. And so I dick around with other tabs and procrastinating and avoiding it out of anxiety, I think, because I just can't commit to doing that much over that amount of time.
It's the scope of it at that point. Yeah.
But you can do anything for 15 minutes, and say, well, okay, I just have to do 15 minutes and then I can stop. Then that's fine. And a lot of times I get to the end of that, I'm like, this is fun, I want to keep going. So I go and get a drink and I come back and I keep going. A lot of people can sit for 2-3 hours and get all their project work done at a time. I don't have the activation energy to start it. It's just the way my brain, and I do this for work stuff too, by the way, work reports and things like that. If I'm having a lot of trouble starting, and I'm like, well, just do 5 minutes and then it's
interesting.
And the other thing, I think Jax mentioned something akin to this, is a lot of times when I start to feel overwhelmed or lose energy for a project, I will kind of deke a little bit to the side and do something that's still in the universe but not the main thing. So when I'm working on a mini campaign in Baltimore, and whenever I'm like, oh god, I've been doing this forever, I will hop on newspapers.com and write up little sections of, this is interesting items from the Baltimore Sun for the week that the scenario is set, or this is some copy for an ad that I think is interesting. So I'll stay in the universe but do something easy and different to sort of give my brain a rest. Yeah,
I've been kind of doing the same thing with my current book. Like, you may not be doing actual writing, but you're actively working towards adding value to that project. Mm-hmm. And so I totally jive with that completely.
Okay, so I also use the timer method, and I think a lot of that has to do with my perfectionism, because I get in my head about it and think I'm not going to actually do what I want to do justice, and so I have a hard time starting. So that is really effective for me as well, just like one little step. I don't have to think about the whole thing, but just do one little step. And then, Evan, you also mentioned doing outlines, which I am a huge proponent of. I love outlines. I know that not everyone loves outlines, but I do recommend that everyone tries it at least once to see if it is something that can work for you. Because I have seen some people that I work with and say, well, I'm a discovery writer, I don't do outlining, and then their process actually doesn't work for them. And so we like, okay, let's try something different. Just give it a shot. And then they discover, oh, okay, I actually am an outliner, but the outline can change as we go. Just because you make something in the beginning doesn't mean it can never change. Yeah. You're going to continue to learn things about your project as you work, and that it's a living, breathing document that you can go back to and move things around and change it. So yes, I'm pro outline.
It's funny because when I started doing my education and writing, in undergrad, I would kind of eschew a lot of those creative prompts, like, doing an idea bubble or doing an outline or things of that nature. I was like, that's not how I work. But the older I get and the more involved in the writing process I get, the more I do lean on some of those, because they are really, really good tools just for ideating and making sure that you're hitting all the logic of the story that you're trying to tell. So just one of those funny things.
Another tool that can be used that, in addition to outlining, is the idea of multiple drafts. And so the idea is that if you know that the draft you are currently writing is not your final draft, it can be a way to push against some of those perfectionist feelings. I know that my things go through X number of drafts, and so I put less pressure on myself on any particular draft, because it's going to be okay if I have a few paragraphs written on this section, but only a few bullet points written in this other section, because at the end of it all, I'm going to save this document, I'm going to make a copy of it, I'm going to call it draft +1, and then I'm going to go back through the beginning and start filling in some of those blanks or rewriting the sections that I'm unhappy with and wondering, why did I put this on the page in the first place? But I think this is an area where interactive fiction writers in the TTRPG space have an advantage that I'm not sure fiction writers do, though I would be interested to hear from the fiction writers among us. Because depending on my mood, depending on the vibes, I may be writing stat blocks. I may be writing descriptions. I may be writing outlines. I may be writing character bios. I have so many components of a scenario that I can work on that can be tailored to wherever my energy level is or my mental level is at, that I can sort of make progress at different speeds on different parts of the scenario. Yeah. I don't know if personally, if I were writing a short story or a novel, if I would feel like I had that similar control, but I don't do that, so I can't speak to it.
I will tell you, as an experimental fiction writer, someone who plays with format and who plays with language and placement of those things in books, I can find ways to be playful with the project and not get bored, especially with a project like the one I'm working on right now, where every story, in order to try to find the voice, I'm trying to figure out how to lay everything out on the page too. Like, how do I want the story to come out? Is it going to be broken up into 5 sections? Is this from a first person point of view? Like, there's a lot of playful ways that you can approach fiction that feels like you're creating similarly for a scenario. So I get that, but like, I think most fiction writers who don't operate in the more experimental ways probably don't have that same flexibility.
I think it's a little bit more limited, but I would put an asterisk on that just because there's a lot of elements that go into creating stories. So like, I can zoom out and say, I want to just work on character bio is a good idea for novelists as well. So I want to develop this character a little bit more, think about their relationships and how they operate in the world. And without actually going into the document that I'm writing my manuscript in and putting in prose, like, I think that there's probably less options, but that there are ways that you can take a break while still making progress.
Yeah.
What I'm grateful for with everybody's answers, and it's something I want to underline, the initial question is about what tools do you use to write? And everyone's answers approach this as an emotional process and an energetic process, this holistic thing, which is very hard. And it takes it's a full body experience, as they say. It's not just putting words on pages, and the process is often very long. And so how do we deal with it as human beings and as people? All the way at the beginning, Heinrich talked about the long walks. That's a favorite of mine. All of the methods about chipping away or getting into the right headspace or understanding you as a person and where it is, for me, more metaphors, here we go. It's placing a rock under a waterfall. If you're trying to hack a rock with a hammer, it's hard, it's painful. You may get stuck in the eye. But all the things that work for me personally are absolutely things getting over my own anxiety and my own self-doubt and the various things that I deal with every day. And then also, additionally, I don't get to put down when I become a writer. I have to still have those things as part of my life. And so the things that I've tried and the things that help me, or the things that are effective, are things that get me into that flow state, that comfort level in which all these other things are not affecting me in a certain way, in which the rock is being flowed over by the waterfall, and anything that comes out then I can be excited for the next step, whatever that is. It's a new draft, it's editing, it's something else, as opposed to a painful, self-flagellating experience, which it so often is. So the tools that are there, it's not just words, but then treatment of yourself and the experience as a person.
Yeah.
If we're talking about holistic experiences, I have my little woo-woo kind of trick that I like, which is sometimes some of my best ideas will come to me right before I go to sleep. So I have a notes app on my phone, and as I'm sort of drifting off to sleep and the idea sets in, I can just kind of roll over and type something in my phone. And sometimes it's totally unusable, but sometimes it's like, oh, my brain is relaxed enough that this problem I've been having with this assignment just sorted itself out. So, like, writing has semantic components. It's wild.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about, writing down an idea that might pop up like right before bed. There was a period of time where I would have these images or these lines that would pop out, and I'd be like, well, I got to write that down because that's something. And eventually that document became 30 pages of things that I never used, even though they were really interesting ideas. But I was like, I just deleted it. And now at this point, for me personally, if the idea is a good one and it sticks, then that tells me the story is worth telling. If it's an idea that's really interesting, but then it disappears really quickly, I'm like, all right, cool, no problem. Like, no harm, no foul. That's not my story. And that's about the most spiritual that I get. Sometimes I let the writing gods take over, yeah. How about you guys? What other kind of weird processes or tools, whether it's like software or hardware, do you guys engage in or lean on?
I want to pitch or the idea of using a co-writer. As Jax mentioned earlier, you are not alone.
Yeah.
And there have been now 2 scenarios. One has come out already called In Fabulous Color. One is forthcoming, where I got about halfway and ran out of energy. And I was like, I love this idea, but I'm not excited enough to finish it. So I went out to friends and I was like, hey, I think this is a great idea, but I'm not going to finish it. Do you want to help? And they were like, yes, this is awesome. And so I just, from when it's not your livelihood, if you're doing it as a hobby, right? Leverage someone else. Who cares if you're splitting the $200 you'll ultimately make on community content? Like,
yeah,
about that. Strongly endorse sharing the workload and the rewards.
Yep.
Yeah, I think one of the big jumps for me as a game designer was jumping and finding that a community existed. I think that when people are approaching games and making them, adjusting them, immediately the homebrew begins without being asked to do so. It's a natural occurrence, and I think that's amazing and beautiful. And the idea of becoming a designer with a capital D, didn't really ever seem like a thing or understand what it was until I happened to be in the right place in which I realized that there was a community of people doing it. My handle on most of my places is my name loves to playtest, because I have found that these are micro communities, and they are sharing and listening and critiquing, and part of the many bumps along the way with the creative project is the lack of accurate self-assessment and the amount of beating yourself up and the project in general that is just so part of it. Like, I suck, this sucks, this whole thing sucks, I'm going to forget about it, move on with my life. And being able to be in a space where people are excited and getting you excited and then sharing and knowing what the next step is amazing. So there's plenty of these versions for writing, for workshops, for critique. Co-writing is excellent because, again, you are going to be hyping each other up and being like, I just love this thing you wrote. Oh, that's great. And also you have new inspiration, right? You don't feel like you're alone in a room by yourself with a piece of paper or a blank screen, which is devastating. That's what all these things are for. So community is what it's all about.
All right. So that's a good question. Do you all have your own kind of writing partners? Like, I write with a buddy of mine every Sunday morning. He works on his own stuff. I work on my stuff. But do you have somebody that you will sit in a room and kind of shame each other into being productive with your work? That's probably the best way of putting that. I find it was really helpful in grad school, and so I just kind of held on to that aspect.
For me, I use 2 different things. There's writing sprints everywhere. So those are really motivating to me. Even if I don't know the people very personally, I'll at least know somewhat internet-wise. We've communicated on Discord or something of that nature. Just knowing that someone else is on the other side of their screen working is really helpful. So that's one of the things I use is writing sprints, but also I have a writing critique group that we meet once a month. So at a minimum, I know I need to have something for them to critique once a month, which is just helpful to have that kind of accountability of I could skip a month if I wanted to, but I would like to use that opportunity because we're all in it together.
Heinrich, Evan, I know you guys may not be in the same room, but do you guys ever find yourselves working on the same project together? I mean, like at the same time in the same space, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I certainly can remember any number of occasions, right, when Evan and I have messaged each other and just said, "Hey, I'm about to, sit down for 30 minutes. If you'd like to join, right, virtually." By all means. And I think that's helpful, especially for someone like myself. I would describe myself as a pretty lonely writer. I enjoy that kind of personal struggle of I'm just inside my own head and I'm trying to figure out these problems. But what I've learned is that however much I may like that romantic image, that doesn't change the fact that if I can just reach out to someone and say, "Hey, I was able to get 500 words on this section done," and they have no idea what I've written, right, or whether it's good or not. But if they give me a thumbs up, or if they say that's awesome, and share something that they may have done, that's a little drip of dopamine that is going to feed into my larger process. And I find it, on some level, I find it all silly, right, and biologically frustrating that these things are so useful. But a lot of writing is figuring out what motivates your fleshy body to do this, right? And it's okay to fool yourself. If that's how you need to think about it, to do some of these things. So positive reinforcement, no matter how sort of superficial we sometimes might think it is, it's not. It's something our bodies value, and I certainly, I try and provide, maybe not superficial, but I try and provide genuine feedback when I can. But Evan, what's your experience? I know working on Year of the Goat together, this scenario anthology for Call of Cthulhu, it's the first time that we are organizing other authors and are not ourselves writing. So it has been a more challenging process of not only how do we keep ourselves motivated to do the editing work and the organizing work, but how do we help the authors continue to feel motivated and creative and do their best work?
Yeah, so I mentioned before my schedule is kind of erratic. I've got 2 youngish kids and sort of limited energy to begin with. But one of the things that I'll do, is I get really interested in people's scenarios, right? If we're working together, whether I'm editing it or we're collaborating or we're just tossing ideas around, right? I really get drawn in. I want to know. So I'll go, if I'm reading their document, I'll go through and leave a bunch of comments like, people have seen me do this. If it's a Cthulhu scenario and they describe something really gross, I'll just leave comments and go, yeah! Because I want them to know that I'm not just looking for structural or, proofreading things. I want them to know which parts are effective and which parts are hitting.
Constructive criticism is a huge, huge thing.
Yeah, including like just cheering for the person, right? Like, this is great. This really creeped me out, or I write like, I hate this so much, but it's affectionate, and so that and because time is fungible, and scarce, when something really needs to get done, a lot of times, and this is something that Heinrich pushes a lot, and I appreciate him for it, is we'll just set up a call. We'll just say, when do you have 20, 30 minutes? Let's hop on Discord and get a video call going and talk through it. I don't personally love calls as much. My MO is more to kind of ambush people with text chats at random times. Usually not after 11 o'clock at night, but sometimes. And I'm just like, hey, I was thinking about this. Matt Tracy and I will tend to do that, like anywhere from 6 a.m. on is game, for I had this awesome idea, let's talk through it. Just because text is easier for me, I can do it while I'm doing other stuff. Both are valuable though, and having processes in place where the less likely you are to stay by yourself for 3 weeks and not have contact with another human being regarding your project, the better. So try to give yourself, if not a deadline, just an avenue where you can check in with someone, just so that you can feel a sense of progress. They can boost you with a little excitement for what you're doing.
And to be clear, I hate that fact, but I do believe it.
That's a good point about taking a break. And I know, Graham, you mentioned this too. Like there's a moment where you have to recognize when to step away from the work and when to go out and kind of disconnect from the work so that you can come back to it more refreshed and possibly with a new perspective to it. Yeah, especially if you end up getting blocked. So, do any of you, and maybe less so as I don't know what the game design world looks like in this regard, but are there particular like reference books that you guys use to help, like, for instance, I've got like this Writer's Guide to Character Traits, which was really helpful during grad school. I clearly have never used it. There's also the Macmillan Visual Dictionary, which is pretty great. This is
I haven't seen that in decades. I had that as a kid.
Holy shit. Like,
oh my God.
This is the kind of, like, it goes into great detail about what the names of things are. Just a fantastic resource for anybody who would like to expand their knowledge base, especially in like the fantasy writing. So do you guys have any kind of reference books that you found helpful for your creation? Like what do you guys tend to use?
Like, what's a girdle? You look up, sorry.
Exactly.
What is a girdle?
What is a girdle? What kind of buttons are on a girdle?
Belt. Oh, why did they just say belt then?
Oh man. So I have two examples. The first is, I don't have a physical copy of it, but it's called the Emotion Thesaurus. And this is something that helps you to be able to describe emotions without using the same words over and over again.
Yeah.
So that's been very helpful if you have some sticking points there. And then the other one I have is called Wired for Story by Lisa Cron. So this one talks about our brain science and why we like stories and what readers expect when they go to sit down and read a story, and how you can meet those expectations in your own writing so that you can engage a reader in an effective way.
Nice.
So yeah, this one has just a lot of great science-backed stuff about story that's fun for anyone across the media to read about.
Nice.
A series of oh, go ahead.
I'm going to be honest. My favorite resource is Wikipedia. I know that's going to disappoint every single high school teacher I've ever had, but Wikipedia is such a phenomenal jumping off point, and I have learned so much from clicking through on the references on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
It's about the references. They go to thing, you go to the bottom, and you're like, books! And you read those books. That's Wikipedia. Yeah.
Yeah, I once, we were talking about like writing with other people and writing scenarios. One of my favorite yearly things is the Delta Green Shotgun Scenario Competition.
Yeah.
Where you can write as many as you want, but your scenarios all have to be 1,500 words or less. And I have written so many shotgun scenarios just based on something I saw in a Wikipedia article.
Really?
Oh, yeah. No, I had one about Agent Nancy being kidnapped by her ghoul cousins and being taken home for Christmas. And I set it in the decommissioned nuclear pyramid in South Dakota. And the critique I got back from my playtesters was, this seems really unrealistic. And I'm like, no, literally, here's the decommissioned nuclear pyramid and also the Mennonites who own half of that property and who run a turkey farming business and are very closely aligned with the National Guard and disaster managers also on that property, which is why I put them in the scenario.
Jesus.
It's
I
so
gotta
wild.
support Jax on this. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm gonna read about the Napoleonic Wars and it may or may not be as intensely, rigorously checked by X number of sources.
Yeah.
But I've always said that Wikipedia is the most current form of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy that's ever going to happen.
Oh, that's a great...
Hitchhiker's Guide
was
about like drink recipes and stuff. Like, it's not about an actual like encyclopedia in the strictest sense. It's what human beings have decided is important and shoved into this document. And so, like, the aggregated lists of weird ass shit that may or may not be real, like, that's the name of the thing, and you're like, what? And every single thing you click on is like a Call of Cthulhu scenario or Delta Green or whatever. It's so awesome. And sometimes it's just like an urban legend and none of the things are verified, and you're like, well, I don't care about that because now I have something to like look at and think about, or impress and scare my PCs that it's unrealistic. But then I can, lord it over them. The turkey farming Mennonites are coming for us all. Like, who knew?
That's right. The turkey farming Mennonites actually are very important because they guard one of the keys to the ghoulified agent's prison, but that's fine.
So
They just keep it behind their counter. Like, you're not gonna go bother the Mennonites. They're too nice. Clearly they have nothing to do with this.
I will never think about Wikipedia the same way again. This is fantastic. Good. Yeah, this is great.
We did it. We did it, everyone.
That's great.
So my dirty secret is that the reason I write scenarios is it gives me a reason to go out and buy books. So, and my reference books for anything are fiction and nonfiction about the setting and the people. I read a ton of that until I start seeing the same things more than once, and then I'm like, okay. So, Graham, like you mentioned, you've hit my special interest. You mentioned the Napoleonic Wars, right? I've read through the Patrick O'Brien Master and Commander series maybe 20 times, and read a whole bunch of nonfiction about that time, and wound up writing this collaborative project.
Yep.
This is Jack Aubrey and Stephen Maturin against the Mythos. For the I have a Baltimore source book for the Prohibition era in the queue at Chaosium. God willing, it'll come out one day. And so I go out and I get stuff like History Lover's Guide to Baltimore, right? Not because the regular history is interesting, but I want the weird stuff. So I also go out and buy those like poorly produced, poorly edited, ghosts of this town that you're in right now.
The weird stuff.
The truly self-published books that are like
stuff that's like in one bookstore because like a guy they know wrote it.
Right.
But that's like where the local lore is at.
Yeah. That's where some juicy stuff could be found for sure.
Yeah, if you're writing for Call of Cthulhu or Trail of Cthulhu, this is an indispensable book. This is just a lot of quick reference for Prohibition era and World War II era stuff, just what life was like, what kind of things you'd have around in that time. My favorite trick that people forget about is that they had operators in the telephones back then. And if you could charm the pants off an operator, they would tell you who's been making calls to and from what number, which is not something you could do now. But if you were really clever, and you'll see that in some of the older detective stories, that they'll be like, hey, operator, has someone placed a call to this extension? And they're like, well, I shouldn't tell you this, but thanks, Gladys. Speaking of old detective stuff, so I'm writing 1936 Baltimore hard-boiled detective campaign. Picked
Dashiell
up
Hammett.
big.
Yeah, I was going to say Dashiell Hammett. Yep.
Yes, and he is actually from Baltimore. In the Baltimore source book, he is a playable PC in one of those scenarios. So
that's right.
I like to immerse myself. Yeah, that's right. You played in that game.
Yep.
I like to immerse myself in the world. I like to, through fiction or nonfiction. And then when I get bored of that, then I start writing the actual scenario. So.
Also, I have to speak up in defense of shitty little ghost publishers. Ed Okonowitz from Mist and Lace Publishing gave me a signed copy of his book when I was 8 years old, Ghosts of the Delaware Bays and Beaches, and he covers all the Delmarva stuff, and I love him. So
I was definitely not. I was not trashing them by any means. It's just that is a specific kind of book sold by a specific kind of person in a very specific kind of place. That's all.
But also you need to go check out Ed Okonowitz's books. They're very good.
All right.
Shout out to you, Ed.
I'm going to stop interrupting Heinrich now.
Oh, that was okay. I think this is true for a lot of games and a lot of readers, but probably in particular Call of Cthulhu gamers. They're really interested in how things work. And so we've been talking about the history, but there's also something to be said for knowing the procedures, if you will, of how things are conducted and getting to experience that and sort of learning about the world and how it functions through gaming. So a series of books that's quite old at this point, but that I started out with is the Howdunit series. Not sure if anyone recalls these, but you've got this whole series of books and some of them are like on police procedures. what do police do when what does it mean to write a police report? What happens to it? How do police conduct interviews? What rights do they have to hold an individual? If you are looking for experiencing things and how to describe them that you yourself have not, in particular in horror games, you might pick up a book like Body Trauma that talks about everything from, here's what a broken limb feels like to here's how getting shot in this part of your body feels like.
Wow.
And it's like, well, if I want to be able to convey that to my readers or my gamers, that can be really useful. So I wouldn't say like that I have them by my desk and I'm constantly opening them, but I'm so glad to have read through them. Mm-hmm. And I know, like when I wrote a scenario involving an autopsy, I don't know all the steps to doing an autopsy or the why incision and all of that, but these books do. And if you can bring that level of realism, it really makes a story or scenario sing for a certain type of gamer.
I've never heard of those before, and now I hate you for letting me know they exist because I'm going to have to buy many of them.
Yeah, I'm looking up Howdunit right now.
Yeah.
I will have bought it by the end of this call.
Holy crap.
That's a great point, and something to consider is also reaching out to someone that does know those things and asking them questions, because I think a lot of people are very open to giving their experiences. So you can do a ride along with a cop. People do that. You can call people who are working in the hospital and ask them questions if they have time. So, reach out to people as well, and they'll be able to answer your questions.
And don't forget academic and historical librarians and museum staff and curators. These people are dying to talk about their work with someone who's interested. And if you call them up and you're like, hey, I'm writing a book, they're like, yes, let me tell you everything about this and give you all kinds of stuff that you had no idea was here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't necessarily need to do a ride along with a cop. You could just go to a museum and talk to a nerd. That might be a more pleasant experience for you in general.
Yeah, please don't. No, yeah, not in this political climate. Maybe don't do a ride along.
I'm good on
Go
that.
to a museum.
Yeah,
Go to a museum.
I'll get the information secondhand. It's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of games and game writing, there's plenty of books written about game design, but I tend to read books about the broader sense of design, like 99% Invisible. But then also I just read games. Games are references to themselves, and one of the things that drew me to it all those years ago was that it's a physical containment of ideas, whether or not it's a board game or a card game or a role-playing game, right? It's only there physically in your hands, and then how do you communicate those things to whoever is going to be peeking through on the other side? So, I playtest. I love playtesting, and I've talked about that, but I also read many, many, many more things that I ever play, and I also read things outside of games a lot. I love reading bad novels because they remind me how to write, like how choices I do and don't want to make, right? I read nonfiction when I'm trying to write fiction, and vice versa. All these things are kind of interrelated and connected, and you get to be the black box where it comes out and supports it. The other side of reference, which is so important, whether or not you're there physically or creating it because you don't get to be there when it's off there. Maybe you can run your own scenario, but oftentimes it's this thing that exists external of you. And so I love reading rules, even boring ones. I've read many, many, many board game rules and things, and thinking about not just like the rules and how they work together in this kind of like various metaphors of how they fit and how they turn and move against each other, but then also just how is the information presented. Like all these things just luckily get to be very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just like analyzing anything that you are working on and getting good examples of those things, and taking the time to ask the next layer of question, which is, why is this good? So if you experience a game at your table, you really like it, why? Why did you like it? What was working? And what was not working, so that you can pull on those things to implement in your own work is very good advice.
We've been talking about books a lot. I also want to say, don't discount zines. People's zines, personal zines, people's political zines, zines of poetry. Like, and self-published zines, you can find them all across the internet for free. You could go to Sherwood Forest Zine Library. You could go to the Anarchist Library. There's a lot of places that have so many cool, like, self-published or copyleft published, just fascinating resources of knowledge and personal experience and all sorts of stuff.
This is a great segue into kind of our final section of the stream. When you guys are working on your project, how do you know when it's done? Like when the editing is done, when you know the story is where it's supposed to be, when the game is where it's supposed to be, and you feel that it's right. Like, is there a defining moment for you guys with your projects, or how do you view that? Vibes.
I don't have a better answer than that. If the vibes are right, it's done.
It's a slippery slope, and I think everybody can attest to the difficulty of the process. It's asymptotic. Like, I always say that the first 50% of any project has to be pure enthusiasm, because if you don't get over that, then, like, what are you doing in the middle? And then everything else is trying to, like, every single point above that gets incrementally, if not building harder and harder, so that, like, last 10%, like, you've lost all objectivity, and you really don't know what you're doing, and so those individual mistakes seem to loom larger. And so it's what we've touched on before. Knowing when it's done is when you have made the mental effort to stop working on it. And that might be in a usable place, and that may say, like, you're not going to ever see it again. What is the difference between throwing it in a drawer and saying it's done out for the world? Very, very little. It's vibes. That is it, right? How do you feel about the thing? Because what you think is done, or the wherewithal you're giving yourself to tweak and add and change and edit, could often be doom, even more so than the thing that's at 50% and you throw it into a drawer. So that's the support from outside. That's editors and friends and co-workers being like, let it go. Just right. Let it go. It's okay. While you're screaming, hold me back, hold me back. I have one more line edit I want to do. Having people to conspire with you is vital for that. Like, what is done in all the quotation fingers I can possibly summon.
I have a practical answer. For those who don't trust their own vibes, I don't trust my own vibes. I'm very untrustworthy of myself. And then a more theoretical answer. But the practical answer is I'm done when my process reaches its conclusion. What's my process? Well, I've figured it out as I'm working on this project, and I tell myself ahead of time, all right, I'm going to do 2 playtests. I'm going to do 1 playtest myself, and then I'm going to give the product to someone else to run a playtest. That's what I get. That's the universe of information I'm going to get. And unless something goes catastrophically wrong, because it's certainly never the case that a 1-hour scenario I wrote actually lasted 4 hours, that's it. And I know I'm going to do, after all of my outlining, I'm going to do a rough draft, and then I'm going to do a first draft, then I'm going to do a second draft, and then I'm going to do a proofread. And that's it, once again. And it's not going to catch everything. But that leads me to my theoretical answer, which is, at which point do I think I'm done? For me, my rule of thumb is 80%. When I am 80% satisfied with the product, I'm ready to release it. And I say 80% because I think it's that last 20% that you really see what Graham was just talking about, which is it becomes very difficult to tell the progress that you are making, because we may no longer be talking about typographical edits. We may now be talking about sort of theoretically what is the better storyline or what could be tweaked. And as a practical matter, I find every time I do a playtest, my scenario gets a bit better. But I can't keep doing playtests. No. And so I set myself a definite number. And, if at some point I revise it, great. But I know that I have a lot of great ideas that I want to write. And if I allow myself to get bogged down on one of them, it's going to be to my detriment. So I'm done when my process finishes, and that's going to lead me to 80% satisfaction.
Heinrich, we have the same number. I was going to give that exact answer because mine is 80% as well. And I apply this to basically everything I do because I have perfectionist tendencies. So every single YouTube video I put out, is this 80% done? Yes, good. Get it out the door. That's what I have to do to not get into the diminishing returns philosophy of spending way too much time for a 0.5% better.
Yeah.
But what people also miss, I think, it's incorrect to sort of think like, oh, if I'm only aiming for 80%, like, am I really getting better? But people don't always appreciate that the 80% of today is not your 80% of tomorrow once you've developed additional skills. And your 80% of tomorrow may actually look more like what 95% of your capability, looked like on a previous project. So have that trust that you are improving all the time, but that it will not happen unless you are able to put a period at the end of one project and start another.
Great. So let's go around the table. Do you guys have like one singular good piece of advice that you would give to writers in your industry? I know when I have people that come up to me and they ask like, well, how do I start writing? How do I start a book? I'm like, you sit down and you write it. I mean, it's literally the freest thing you could do. Like, it costs no money. You have to sit down and write it. You can't edit something that doesn't exist. So if you want to write the book, you're going to have to write the book. That's just, there's no two ways about it.
I think a good piece of advice is to think about your why, which is, why are you motivated to do this project? Is there a particular theme that's really pulling you, that you want this out into the world? What is really driving you and motivating you to do this work? Because then that will sustain you throughout the process, and you can revisit that why continuously when things get hard, because things will get hard.
I work with a lot of new TTRPG authors, particularly in the community content space, where we're not professionals. We're doing this as a hobby, and so the perfectionist tendencies that Leslie was talking about are a real impediment to a lot of folks. And what I try and remind individuals of, and this is sort of your greatest asset and also your greatest hurdle, is that when you're starting out, what you are writing, probably the worst thing you're ever going to produce.
Yeah.
Probably the first scenario you write may very well be the worst scenario you ever write. But there's never going to be a second scenario unless you get that first scenario. And I think it's important to not compete with your future self, right? But to create this foundation and accept that the future writer that you will become is going to stand on your shoulders. But that does require you to take these initial steps and take these chances and produce something that is not the best work that you're going to produce, because you're not capable of that yet, but you will one day.
Jax, Graham, Evan?
I already gave the advice at the beginning, which is done is beautiful. I actually do a lot of TTRPG and LARP design as my second career, and I think one of the best things you can do is to not get so up your own butt that you are unwilling to take criticism. Yeah. Learning how to take criticism is a crucial skill, and one I still struggle with sometimes. And if you want to see what happens when you can't or won't take criticism, Google the name Audra Winter.
Okay, I will do that.
Yeah,
cool.
I think similar to what Leslie said, like the first thing. So I've done a couple times now a workshop to help people get their scenarios in order, and we get a lot of first time people who are struggling to get started, and they want to tell me all about it and all the things that happen and all the backstory. I'm like, wait. Before we start, you have 2 sentences. Tell me what you love about this project. What excites you? And until they get to that point, we don't move any farther, because Leslie, you're totally right. You have to have a reason for getting up in the morning and working on this project. And you have to know what central thing you're communicating that you want the reader to be excited about too. So find that first and then let that drive everything else. If you're just like, well, I want to write a scenario, that's not going to get you through this scenario. That's just going to nag at you until you walk away disgustedly. So.
Yeah, my advice dances around these things as well as stuff that I've already kind of talked about, which is that like the purpose and the enthusiasm, that like 50% mark of just like you have to be so into it at that point, otherwise it falls off. And the other one is the whatever the stick in the landing is and this final thing that you're sharing. In terms of game, it's playtesting as soon as humanly possible, because then you are getting witnesses to the crime of your creation. But then also it's letting you have more context than what's happening. Otherwise, it's a cool idea, or I think this would be, right? The pithy version is ideas are easy, execution is hard. And the idea of how do you get that execution where you get to it, there's many ways to do it. And in terms of the pros of the scenario, it's play testing or having other people read it and knowing your steps. It's very easy to find pitfalls. It's very easy to create barriers or find barriers to get to the end of something. The 80% pleased, it's not 80% done. It's I'm 80% happy with this thing. That's great because you need to move on. I absolutely agree with this sentiment, is that when you finish this thing, you can work on the thing that you're going to be way more excited about anyways, but you really got to finish it and get it out there in whatever the form is. A PDF or a physical book or a scenario, right? So that it's done and public so that you can go to the next thing. That is what you need to do, or else it's a scattered library of forgotten, broken dreams. But you can turn those dreams into inspiration for yourself and other things. I'm so excited about the next thing I'm going to be doing, and I have to be looking at this thing being done in order to be fully satisfied with the next thing that I'm working on. Yeah.
That is fantastic. Guys, thank you for being here today. I want to do one more quick round of things. I want to, again, alphabetically, I want you to talk at length about what you've got in the hopper, what you're working on right now, hype whatever you've got, even if it is just forthcoming and not ready to be sold yet. We're going to start with you, Evan.
Sure. So as mentioned, I have the book of scenarios coming out with Heinrich, which is going to be fantastic. I have a Cthulhu by Gaslight campaign book coming out with multiple authors, which is very, very fun. What else am I working on? I have my Baltimore Hardboiled Detective mini campaign. I have a genetic reconstructed dinosaurs run amok using Alien RPG rule set coming out at some point soon. I don't know. We got a lot of things going on.
That's good.
There's and then there's a scenario with Rena Henze called Hot Bro Summer, which is like Jersey Shore with Mythos madness. So you don't even have to play it to experience it. Just do like 6 shots of Jaeger and read from the Necronomicon. And
I mean, if Rena's involved, it's going to be great. Yeah, it's going to be great. Graham.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my upcoming TTRPG is Cabin in the Woods, but for Hallmark movies. It's called Love for the Love Gods. I'm excited about that. It had its crowdfunding campaign earlier this year on Love Gods Day, February 14th, as everyone knows, is Love Gods Day. The latest thing to come to fruition, I wrote a mega game that premiered at Gen Con. It was called Skyer. It was supported by the CBR plus P&K system, which in and of itself is a super pared down Blaze the Dark, but in a cyberpunk future. And I think that the second form of it is going to go up for tickets at PAX Unplugged at the end of the year. So 30 plus players and cosplaying VIPs and kind of interlocking systems. Mega games, I think, are special. Oftentimes, I'll refer to them as board game, role-playing game hybrids. A lot of the time, I'll just say it's tricking board gamers into LARPing. So support your LARP designers and your mega game things. Come play Skyer at PAX Unplugged.
Awesome. Heinrich, tell us what you're working on, man.
Yeah, so Evan already mentioned the scenario anthology. It's going to be called Year of the Goat. We're hoping to launch it in the new year. It is going to be 12 scenarios, all focused on different aspects of the eldritch deity Shub-Niggurath in the Call of Cthulhu universe. So very excited about that. Very excited to get to share the works of some experienced authors, some first-time authors. There's just going to be so much creativity in this book. It's been a real pleasure to work with so many great folks. The personal project I'm working on is actually outside of the Call of Cthulhu sphere, which is a book for the anime TTRPG Fabula Ultima. This is a role-playing game that sort of recreates the 80s JRPG feels of your Final Fantasies and does it very effectively in its rule system. If you're a fan of different rule systems and how rules can reinforce storytelling, this is a great example. And I published a book called the Isekai Fantasy Atlas, sort of a source book for the setting, and I'm now working on something called the Urban Fantasy Atlas.
Fantastic. Jax, what you got? What's happening?
So I am currently in the process of producing and hosting a small house con called Nauticon Con 2 in the Poconos that I am very excited about. We are running some chamber LARPs there. It'll be a good time. I also just finished a big edit for Cult Divinity Lost, and I will probably be doing some more Cult Divinity Lost edits before the end of the year. There's some really good books coming out, so you guys should be excited for that.
Very.
I also did plenty of work for Curseborn, which is the new Onyx Path game that's been probably sort of floating around on your feeds, so please check that out. And I'm not sure what I'm going to be self-publishing next, but when I know, I'll let you know.
Love it. Love it. Leslie, what are we in store for from you?
Yeah, so my focus right now is helping other people with their creative projects. So if you are in the fantasy, sci-fi, or horror space, either in the fiction writing side or tabletop game side, I would love to chat with you. I want to know what's going on with your projects, how I can help. I am a developmental editor and book coach and really help in the beginning stages of all of this process. So that, and then you can find me on YouTube under XPLovecat.
All right, and that, friends of the Symphony, is where our show ends for the night. Thank you so much for everyone who took the time to join us in this deep dive. We sincerely appreciate you. We hope you'll consider checking out our next video in the series, starring several of our favorite creators from the other side of the globe as well. Again, if you enjoyed this content, please consider helping the Symphony make more by backing us on Patreon at patreon.com/Symphony Entertainment. We hope you've enjoyed the Symphony, and we look forward to seeing you again. Have a wonderful night. Thank you.